done for. Everyone get out.
Greetings sailors, welcome to the second part of my preview footage of the Russian destroyers. Well, technically the third part. We had a kind of a garage overview and we've had a look at the lower tiers, but now we're going to look at tiers 5 to 7, and this is where it starts to get interesting. Now the tier 5, the Nevni, and I'm going to assume it's Nevni rather than Gnevny. Yeah, it's basically, in terms of its guns, identical to the Gremyashi, but as I mentioned in my overview, I think the Gremyashi is the superior ship just because it's more versatile. It has twice the torpedo range. It's also got a better turning circle, although it's something like a knot slower than the Gnevny. So this goes very slightly faster, but there's a massive trade-off in your torp range. And you better get used to those 4km torps, because from tiers 5 to 7, that's all you've got. That's your only option. Although there are some upgrades. I think the tier 7... I think the tiers... Yeah, no, tier 6 and 7 get a 70 knot option, and the tier 7 actually has... Well, it goes back to being 65 knots, which is what the Nevni has, but the Kiev at tier 7, you get those 4km torpedoes, but they're very, very powerful torpedoes for their tier. In fact, they're as powerful as the Japanese torpedoes. It's just they have less than half the range. So the Nevni is really the first one where I think you can properly get away with stealth firing, and that's because your gun range goes up to a very healthy 12 kilometers, and that's pretty decent. In fact, that's the best of all three of the destroyers at this tier, or the regular destroyers I should say. And there's a magic number you need to know with these guns. It's 3.9 kilometers. That's how much your detection range extends when you're firing. So with the Nevni, with camo paint, your base detection range goes up to 10.7 kilometers when you're firing, but your gun range is 11.9. So that gives you 1,200 meters to play with, 1.2 kilometers, and that is enough that you can stealth fire without needing the captain's skills. Now this is actually, of the three ships we're going to see, as good as it gets, and you'll see that I do manage to stealth fire reasonably often in this this particular replay on the ocean map. I was joined by Conway for this battle, by the way. He ends up with a much better score than me, but mostly because he gets torpedoes off, whereas my one attempt to close the distance to get torpedoes off for somebody doesn't go well, but you'll see. But yeah, I mean, you go from this with 1.2 kilometers with just the camo paint. You don't need captain skills for that. At tier 6, it drops by half to 600 meters, and then at tier 7, it drops a further 100 meters to 500 meters. But it gets worse, because at the tier 8, which we're not covering in this video, with the concealment system, with the camo paint, it's still only 300 meters. So tier 8, you absolutely need the captain skills, and I'd say for tier 6 and 7, you really need the captain skills at that point as well. So you can get some flavour of it at the tier 5, but it goes downhill for a while. Then once you get to tier 9, it shoots back up again, because you go from 300 meters to 3 kilometers. Now, at the tier 9 and 10, you get an extra equipment slot for extending your gun range, and that's why it jumps up quite so much. But obviously, by that point, you'll probably have captain skills as well, the relevant tier 4 and 5 captain skills, so in practice, you'll probably be able to get even better ranges than that. So the rate on fire of these guns is pretty good. The turret turn time at tier 5 is, I think, 36 seconds. Yeah, same as the Gremyashi. So you can't maneuver really hard and keep your guns on target, but you can turn reasonably well. And I am keeping the St. Louis here at range and managing to keep my guns on him fairly healthily. And although these are only destroyer shells, the chance to set people on fire with them is fairly low. You can get quite a lot of them out, so you can easily have a half dozen, if not more, fires in a battle. And it almost felt like the Russian destroyers were better at setting people on fire than the German cruisers. So I don't know, even though in theory these are the worst shells, I think you can just fire them much more quickly, and you can get that capability to fire them from stealth. But at the moment, I mean, I'm just at the edge of the detection range, 10.7 kilometers from this St. Louis. So there we go, we're slightly further away now. So at this point I am now firing from stealth. So you can see how close this is to the edge of the actual firing radius, but with a bit of practice, no, you can absolutely do it. And the biggest threat is from unspotted destroyers, because as I pointed out, pretty uniformly across the tiers, these ships have the worst base detection ranges, and Japanese destroyers especially are quite hard to spot before they spot you. In fact, it's basically impossible. So if you fire and you know that you're at least 10.7 kilometers away with the Gnevny from the nearest spotted target, but you get spotted anyway, you know that there's a destroyer that's closer than that. So that's information, you know, you just have to bear that in mind. One way in which you can use the guns, and I found this much more with the tier 6 and 7 as you will see, is if you're keeping near friendly ships. If you are making yourself the only target to shoot at, then yes, they'll shoot at you. But if you're keeping near friendly ships and basically being a kind of support gunboat, then you're less likely to get targeted because you're a harder thing to hit. And I think once these ships go live, people are going to realise fairly rapidly that they're not really dangerous in terms of their torpedoes unless they get really, really close. So if you're sailing around at a much further distance, just firing your guns off, chances are, if you're near friendly ships, they'll target somebody else instead of you. At least, that's the theory. That's what you'd hope. Probably won't always work out like that, but you never know. So this game was going pretty well so far, although Conway was having a much better time of it than me. I'm up to over 54 hits already, 4 fires set. Conway had managed to use his torpedoes several times already, and actually I might have ended up using his replay, but he forgot to have them turned on, so it's a bit unfortunate. So there's a Wyoming on the 10 line, and I know he's there, and I'm kind of heading in his direction, but I'm concentrating for now on this other Wyoming, and he's just sailed into detection range, 10.5 clicks, so we're closing range here, but there are multiple things for him to shoot at. However, the other Wyoming is going to start shooting at me, and because I'm so focused on firing at this guy, I don't really notice it until I take a hit. Unfortunately, it's an AP shell, so it doesn't really do that much damage, but I mean, you're a destroyer, you really can't take that much damage. Now this thing's pretty fast. I mean, they're all pretty fast. Let's see, 38.4 knots, which is slightly slower than the Minikaze at 39.4. It actually, I mean, the speeds, it picks up from the lower tiers, and the lower tiers, I think the tier 4 was the slowest, and yeah, that was, why was I firing behind him? I don't know. But it's a bit variable. I mean, the Gnevny's pretty nippy, the tier 6, which we'll come to, is actually a little bit slower, and then it really picks up again at tier 7. So there's this Wyoming. I actually just burned out the other Wyoming for the kill, so I'm still only halfway behind Conway in terms of kills, but I was hoping to add this guy to my kill list. I'm just steaming towards him, closing the distance, and I'm thinking, okay, less than 3 kilometers, okay, get the torps out. But the thing is, on this kind of map, I mean, unless you can really ambush somebody, maybe I should have just gone closer, I don't know, but he's able to turn in time, he's paying attention. Well, how could he not be? I'm charging towards him across open water, and that barrage of torps entirely misses. Unfortunately, also, his secondaries knocked out my engine, and that was just pure bad luck. And although I've popped out smoke, he's about to go into the 2 kilometer auto detection range. I don't have any more torps to give him, so yeah, this is RIP for me, but this is one of the only 2 last ships left alive, so we have won this. It's just, yeah, I took the risk of closing over open water to try and get within torpedo dropping range, and even though he's in a tier 4 battleship, he actually managed to dodge them really well, so, I mean, that was my bad for, I could have placed the spreads a bit better or held onto them a bit longer, I suppose, but it just shows you the risks of this kind of, like, even when it's one of the last 2 ships left alive, trying to close over open water like that. But we'll get another example of that with the Kiev, the tier 7, where I actually managed it much more successfully. Well, kind of successfully, you'll see. So that was 103 shots fired, 103 shots hit rather. Top half of the team, although as you can see, Conway did really well. He landed a good couple of torp hits. Unfortunately, I don't have his detailed scores, but this was still an okay game in the Gnevny. This is probably one of the better games I had in the Gnevny. Over 33,000 damage from HE shells, nearly 20k damage, just over 19k damage from fires, and it was good matchmaking, but all the same, that was not bad considering that was just mostly my guns. So we're on to the tier 6 now, the Ognavoy, and this is with its upgraded torpedoes. It's slightly more damage than the Nevni has, but these are the 70 knot torpedoes. The tier 7 also has 70 knot torpedoes, but the highest damage torpedoes, which do nearly 18,000 damage each, those are 65 knots. So, I mean, 65 knots is still pretty fast, but with these mid-tiers, you're probably not going to be using those 4-click torpedoes very often at all. And I was talking about in the lower tiers videos, tiers 2 to 4, that I felt like that's the sweet spot in terms of using torpedoes, because there's a lot more people just derping around. But in these mid-tiers, it's a lot harder to close the distance. So I almost think you can disregard your torpedoes a lot of the time. But, you know, having said that, be on the lookout for opportunities. Sometimes you'll be able to ambush somebody from behind an island or whatever, because if they just don't know you're there, then you can get away with quite a lot. But bear in mind, 4 kilometers is only twice the range of the auto spotting range. That's only 2 kilometers, so you still have to be careful. So I'm well out of spotting radius of the ships I was firing at, so I know there's a destroyer nearby, and there we go, lo and behold, it's a Hatsuharu. And this guy kind of messes up, as you will see, and I think I've sailed into detection range of him, or he sailed into detection range of me, or whatever. So he's trying to outgun me, and the guns on the Hatsuharu aren't actually that bad, but these guns are better. You've got a little bit more range. It's 100 meters more range. It's 12 versus 11.9. Your detection range has actually gone up. So as I said, you lose half of that kind of stealth firing radius. It's now only 600 meters. It's a pretty slim margin, but it kind of makes up for it by the fact that you've got half the turret turn time, so you can now maneuver a lot harder. And so with the rate of fire this thing has, yeah, it's actually pretty decent in terms of outgunning other destroyers. You might still have difficulties with American destroyers maybe, but anyway. So that Hatsuharu managed to run aground, and he's going to rip fairly rapidly. And again, I'm trying to get some ranged fire going here, but 600 meters is not a big gap to play with, and you just have to be really careful, because people can just and that's how little margin there is. It's just he's turned inwards slightly, and that's it. I'm spotted already. But I'm not going to get too close. I'm just trying to keep my distance here. I'm just hoping that my speed, which has dropped slightly since the tier 5, you lose about a knot of speed, but it's still pretty nippy. I mean, it's still nearly the fastest. The Matsuki is actually about half a knot faster than this, but yeah, 37.3 knots is still not bad. But I'm just kind of banking on the fact that I'm not the only target around. There are some ships, some allied ships to my south, so there's not that many of the enemy team up here, it looks like. So this is a good opportunity to use my guns, even though I'm spotted. And there's actually an Atlanta that's rapidly about to pull alongside me, and well, you'll see the rate of fire from him. I mean, if that enemy battleship, the Amagi, was going to be shooting at anything, it would be the Atlanta next to me rather than me, just because it would be an easier target to hit. Now, he knows I'm here. If I tried to charge this guy down, I don't think it would have gone that well. I mean, I probably was, when I was playing a lot of these matches, concentrating a lot more on the guns and maybe not looking for opportunities to use torpedoes as hard as I might have. I mean, I could have tried to charge him down. I probably would have burned a lot of health or even died in the process, but as it turned out, I mean, look at this just rain of fire from the Atlanta. Yeah, if I'd even been able to close half the distance before the Atlanta just whittled away a lot of his health, I don't know, but as it was, I was just content with adding my firepower to the Atlantas. And this Amagi's now just wishing he hadn't been born. Yes, he's actually kind of surrounded, so although we only had one cap point at this stage, we're winning this northern bit of the map, and once we've got this, we can get the B area fairly easily. Or is it the C area? I think it's the C area, actually. And killing this Amagi will obviously give us a big chunk of points in our favour as well. Just look at that arc though. When you've got an Atlanta sitting next to you firing, it's like, how do you tell your shots from theirs? I know they are slightly differently coloured, and I think this was actually a game I played on a stream. Because I did last week a whole bunch of, I don't know, research streams or whatever you want to call them, where I just sat down and played on the test account a whole bunch. But yeah, it's like even with the fact that your own shells are coloured slightly differently, it was actually kind of hard to tell when they were getting close to the target, just because this Atlanta was putting out so much fire. So we've skipped on a little bit. We were winning fairly conclusively in this game. It wasn't that much of a challenge, but you'll see at the end, you know, I had a reasonable score out of it. This was actually tier 6, you know, tier 6 ship in a tier 8 battle, so I was bottom tier. And being bottom tier and doing damage to higher tiers, it does, as in World of Tanks, give you extra XP, so that probably helped my result. But even so, I was kind of surprised, because it's not nearly as many hits as you'll have seen in the previous battle, but if anything, I think it was a better XP result. So that Fubuki is, well, he's desperately trying to drop torpedoes, and he's actually going to get some in that Tirpitz, I think, but he is seriously outmatched right now, and I don't know, oh no, he misses the Tirpitz. I don't though, I'm about to boop the Tirpitz, I think. Yeah, it's like, okay, well, I was banking off the Tirpitz, that's it. I was using the Tirpitz to change my direction very rapidly. Yeah, that's my excuse, yeah. Advanced tactical stuff, you wouldn't understand. But that Fubuki's being just lit up by our Aoba down there, although he's in a bit of trouble himself because there's a battleship coming along the F line, but it's not going to take that many more enemy kills to tie this up, but they have. I mean, I don't want to get complacent here. We have not that huge of an advantage in ships against them, and we do almost have the sea point, but it doesn't do to get complacent in games like this. You can think you've got a runaway victory, and then all of a sudden the last couple of ships turn out to be very, very hard to kill, or tanks, or whatever. But we are, I mean, we've skipped ahead again a bit here. We are winning this. So, again, I'm going to use the guns. This is well within detection radius, but there's plenty of bigger, badder targets around. So, I'm fairly confident they're not going to pick on me. I'm not quite sure what I was looking around for there, but anyway. Now, I might have tried the AP shells against the Cleveland, but I think I just stuck with HP. HP? HE for this particular match, but for some cruisers it may worth be using the AP shells. I'm not sure. Probably more at the lower tiers, but fire is a fairly powerful. Like, you can get a lot of extra damage out of a game with fire, even with the relatively small fire chance that these shells have. And I did 2/3 of the HE damage in that last game with fire damage. You know, it was like 33k HE damage and nearly 20k fire damage. So it can add a lot to your score. And there we go, I actually ninja'd that Cleveland kill. So they had 2 ships left at this point, but I think this replay is just about done. Because, yeah, there we go. I think we won on points, so I kind of cut it off slightly early there. So that was only 67 hits that time, only 1 kill, but more fires, and fires are a bit RNG, but more fires is good, more fire damage is more XP, especially against higher tiers. And as you can see, I placed second on the team, so ahead of a pair of Tirpitzes, and actually our Aoba was first place, so he was clearly doing a decent amount of damage to higher tier ships as well. They actually had 1 Tirpitz on their team that must have been doing pretty damn well as well, because 1200 XP on a defeat is not too shabby. So this time it was 27k damage. That's actually less, but no, actually also less HE, less fire damage, but I think that's a slightly higher ratio. I'm not sure. I can't do numbers. It's late. So lastly, we come to the Kiev, which is the fastest of the bunch. It's got, as I've said, fairly hard-hitting torpedoes, still 4km range. It has a 43 knot speed, just about, and it's only got 500 meters to work with in terms of invisible firing, if you don't have cruise skills. So I don't think I even managed it at all successfully in this battle, and I contented myself for well, a good couple of minutes. I mean, it was the first nearly 10 minutes I spent trying to spot stuff my team to shoot at. And of course you don't get spotting damage in this game, but still giving information to your team, you know, lighting up enemies can be very, very useful. But it wasn't really working because there wasn't really anyone around for to shoot at the enemies that I was keeping lit up. So it proved to be a rather frustrating and boring first couple of minutes to this game, and I knew I couldn't really get away without with firing without just being spotted, and I'd be the only thing to immediately shoot at, so that would have been a bad move. You don't want to make yourself the only target if at all possible. This was also... Actually, I'm not sure what the matchmaking was. I think it was at least a tier 8 game, but I'm not entirely certain. But the speed was going to come in very useful in this one, as you'll see. And although I'm not really making use of it right now, I'm just kind of circling around trying to spot stuff, I eventually get bored and I just head west because that's where all our ships seem to be. Except, by the time I get over here, most of the team's buggered off back eastwards again, and I was just like, I don't know. I was just kind of scratching my head and thinking, well, what do I do? Because if I open fire, it's probably not going to go well for me. But if I keep these guys spotted, well, maybe they'll do some damage, but I don't get any XP for that. So, again, I was in this kind of slightly frustrating position of I knew I didn't really have a lot of range to work with in terms of opening fire invisibly. In fact, it'd have to be pretty much people at the very edge of my range circle. And moderating your own speed to keep pace with much slower battleships and to keep them at that sweet spot, that very, very narrow kind of sweet area. I don't know if that sounds weird when I put it like that, but yeah, it's a lot harder in the Kiev, and this is one where, well, the tier 6 even is one where you really need those captain skills for it to fully unlock its potential. So our team, I mean, I was not impressed with the rest of the team really here. I knew I couldn't really close the distance to drop torpedoes on anyone because it would have just been plain suicidal. Couldn't really use my guns, and I was just relying on my team, but they weren't really shooting at these people that I was keeping lit. So, I mean, that's kind of an issue sometimes in that there are some ships and some situations where it's like you can only do so much. You've only got a certain kind of set of characteristics to work with a ship, and it's sometimes possible to get into situations where you're more reliant on your teammates than you'd like, and sometimes your teammates do things that you don't understand, and it was really the case in this battle. So, although I'm just kind of trailing ahead of the detection range here. I think my base camo range is 7.9 kilometers or something like that. So, I mean, there's a couple of 100 meters to spare here, but if that Cleveland gets much closer, or if I let him get much closer, then I'll get spotted. So I wasn't going flat out full speed here, I think, and I was kind of deliberately turning to kill my speed a bit as well. But just nobody's firing at these people. I mean, the Cleveland took some fire earlier on, but it's like, well, what's the rest of the team doing? Now, there are some enemies on the 9 and 10 lines, but I don't know, this is the entirety of the rest of our team that's gone back to deal with those ships, and they don't even really seem to be effectively dealing with those ships, so I don't know. And it was at this point we're approaching the 10-minute mark, and I just thought, I've got to do something. I've literally had no hits in this battle. I've got to get some XP out of this. And if I don't do something, well, nobody else is doing anything about these ships advancing towards our cap circle, so I just threw caution to the wind and started firing, knowing I would be detected. And that's a Cleveland, that's a dangerous enemy. Now, I was trying AP, and I'm not quite sure why I was trying AP. Maybe it was just, I thought, okay, we'll give it a go, and I'll experiment and see how effective it is. Personally, I think if you're going to fire AP against cruisers, you probably want to get them on fire first and then hit them with AP shells. But this actually does demonstrate one thing. It demonstrates the straight line speed of this, and if you can, well, you can keep ahead of everything pretty much. Anything that you're likely to see in a tier 7 destroyer, you can keep ahead of, except another Kiev. So I knew that I could keep this guy at a sufficient distance that I could have a very good chance of dodging him. And I'm getting my shots out, and these are all AP hits. So, yeah, I mean, it's doing some damage. Setting him on fire probably would have done more damage in the long term, but it's forcing this guy back. Meanwhile, the rest of the team, I don't know, just kind of dispersing in all directions and dying one by one, it looked like, from the minimap. So, yeah, I mean, with destroyer guns, you can be very effective in the Soviet destroyers, but at the end of the day, you're only a destroyer, and if you're going to carry a match in a destroyer, it's probably going to be down to torpedoes rather than anything else, because you've only got so much time in a match. And especially at the higher tiers, when you're seeing people with lots of hit points, good luck taking down all of their hit points on your own with your little destroyer guns. And that's if you can, you know, that's assuming you can stay in stealth even, which in this, with this captain, with his 3 skill points, I really didn't have a hope of doing. So, yeah. So, again, just continuing to fire, just dodging, still using AP shells. I must have just been experimenting with AP shells in this particular battle. I'd forgotten that it was purely AP that I was firing. But, you know, against cruisers, AP will do something. This might have been a top tier game, actually. I don't know. These all look like tier 6s, so if it was tier 8 matchmaking, there was only 1 or 2 of them beside. So just using my speed, I mean, these guys can all outrange me, but I can outmaneuver them fairly comfortably. But although we've killed a couple of theirs, they still have a bit of a lead, and this group of ships has been pressing across towards us, towards our cap, for a while now. We've had fair warning of this, and it seems only like maybe 1 or 2 of my teammates have bothered trying to turn around and do anything about it. So I don't know. I don't know what was going on in this one. I was just scratching my head for quite a lot of it. So I've got a friendly ship nearby, and I decided this Fuso, well, he's very, very healthy. I can maybe set some fires. I can at least be an annoyance. And oh, someone's got torps in the water. So there's an enemy destroyer around as well somewhere here. And even if I wasn't very likely to get spotted firing at Fuso anyway, well, the destroyer would definitely do it. But that means, well, this battleship that's close to me, I've got to try and screen him from the destroyer, as well as having a go at setting this Fuso on fire. And that Cleveland's still back there as well. I mean, he's low health at this point, but he is still there. And we're also being capped. And not a lot of the team that's remaining. I mean, this battleship's come down here to engage, and we know there's 1 guy in the cap, and we've still got 2 battleships left alive. We've still got a carrier with a bunch of planes. Is he doing anything about it? Nah. So I don't know. The Amagi looks like he's trying. The Colorado, not so much. Maybe it's just a case of everybody was so wrapped up that by the time they noticed what was going on, it was just much, much too late to do anything about it. And you can have that sense sometimes playing destroyers generally, because these are the fastest ships in the game. And the Russian destroyers are by far the fastest ships in the game. And the tier 10 is actually only a little bit faster than this. The tier 7 and the tier 8 are about the same at just under 43 knots. And the tier 10 is nearly 43.5 knots. And that's just, yeah, it goes like a rocket. It really accelerates well. But you'll see that when I get round to it in the next video. But yeah, you can feel like just everybody else is just, you know, oh my god, why are you all so slow? Just ignoring the fact that you're, it's not that they're slow, it's just you're really fast. Although in the case of the American battleships, yeah, they are actually quite slow. Anyway, rapidly running out of teammates at this point. I don't know, we've got planes flying all over the place. The Amagi looks like he's going to get hit by aerial torpedoes. They're halfway to capping at this stage. And that destroyer is still around somewhere. So I was still holding out hope at this point that maybe we could pull this back, maybe. But I mean, I don't think I really seriously did, though. There was just too little coordination going on. There was too little kind of evidence of the remaining friendlies actually trying to respond to what they were doing, trying to respond to us being capped, trying to I don't even know. You know, somebody's been decapping at least. There's 2 enemy ships in the cap at this point. Somebody has been trying to decap and has been firing shells in there, but yeah, this is just kind of all over the place. Anyway, there's that destroyer that I knew was around, Matsuki, so I switched focus to him, and I was thinking maybe of going for the Fuso, but we're still being capped. And oh, that's nasty. Okay. Oh, ouch. That's some big hits. I know the Matsuki's not really a big threat, but the Fuso choosing to shoot at me is not so good. And it looks like I'm also being shot at from the cap circle as well. And I really don't have a lot of space to play with here now. I've got battleships to the north of me. I've got a battleship and a destroyer to the south of me. So, yeah. And I have a look around and I notice just how close I am to this New Mexico. So, although this is... I mean, I could try and make a getaway. I do have a speed boost, my last speed boost currently active, but I figure if I can kill this New Mexico, maybe it'll give us a chance, maybe. And this is definitely a desperation maneuver, but yeah, you'll get to see these 70-knot torpedoes in action. Now this is broadside of a battleship, and you really do have to get this close. And that's the thing with these tier 5 to tier 7 ships, is that by the time you're close enough to drop torpedoes, you're already within the enemy battleship's secondary ranges. And the secondaries largely fire HE shells, so they can do a lot of damage. But anyway, he just plows right into those. That's like 30,000 damage with those 4 torps. So it was a good, you know, it gave us points. And we lost the battleship that was on the J line, but I think he took down that enemy battleship as well. But yeah, I mean, we're so down on points at this stage. It's 2 versus 3, but they are nearly doubling us in points, and they're capping us as well. So yeah, this was closer than I thought it would be, but ultimately, unfortunately, I could not do enough to make that a win. So again, the good rate of fire showing there, over 100 hits, and this has, like the tier 6, a very good turret traverse time. It's actually almost as good a turret traverse as the American destroyers for their tiers, and the rate of fire is, I think, almost as good as well. I'm just trying to find the relevant... Oh, I don't even know. Yeah, no, it is. It's as good as the American destroyers. It's just the turret traverse, not quite as good. But yeah, but it's kind of, these are the awkward tiers, I feel, of these ships. The tier 5 is actually probably the bright spot of these mid tiers. Tier 6 and tier 7, you need the captain skills to get the most out of that invisible firing kind of play style. Tier 8 is going to be even more awkward, but we'll get to that in the next video. But yeah, I mean, they're not bad ships, but I think it's really at the high tiers where the Soviet destroyer, that play style really comes to the fore. So that was it for this look at the mid tiers. It was basically just some gameplay. This is not necessarily representative of what the actual ships will be like. It's just some gameplay of the games I had. And if you thought it was useful, if you found it enjoyable, you can hit the like button. You can leave any comments below. You can subscribe to my channel. And as always, stay tuned for more.